Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. Just giving part 2 of the video on complex equations. We had just started doing some where you had a variable on both sides of the equal sign. We're going to do a few more of those and then look at some ones that have some parentheses in them. And then you'll get a practice assignment. So here we have 3w plus 5 equals 2w plus 7. And remember, the idea is that you want to have a variable on one side of the equal sign, and the best way to do that is to subtract off the one that's smaller, and you'll be left with more positive numbers. So in this one I have a 3w on this side of the equal sign, a 2w here. I don't want to have a variable on both sides of the equal sign, so I'll subtract off the smaller one. So I'm going to do minus 2w. And remember the idea of equality in algebra. If I do that to one side of an equal sign, I can do it to another side of an equal sign. Now let's look at what's left. 3w minus 2w gives me 1w, or just w, plus 5. 2w minus 2w goes away, and I'm left with equals 7. And look at that. All of a sudden we go from something that looks sort of complicated to a basic one-step grade 7 kind of equation. To finish solving this one, you subtract 5 from both sides, and you're left with 1w equals 2. And I think I've said this 1,000 times now. I know I'm very repetitive, but 1w is the same as w. And we're done. Just combining everything you know. Let's try another one. Okay, last one. 2z plus 4 equals 5z minus 8. No, I think I'm going to do one where we subtract off the larger variable. Just to show you it works, it gives you negative numbers. So in this one, I have a z on this side of the equal sign. I have a z over here. I could subtract 2z off from both sides, but just to change it up a bit, I'm going to subtract off 5z from both sides. And if you see what happens here, 2z minus 5z is going to give you a negative 3z. Sometimes I avoid that if I can. Still have plus 4. 5z minus 5z goes away, equals negative 8. And now it's a regular two-step equation. Negative 3z plus 4. I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And I'm going to get negative 3z equals negative 12. It's multiply by negative 3, so I'm going to divide by negative 3. And negative 3 divided by negative 3 is going to leave me with positive 1z, or just z, and negative 12 divided by negative 3 is going to leave me with positive 4. And there's my solution. And as you have probably figured out throughout this whole unit, algebra is just using a lot of add, subtract, multiply, divide integers, right? So you really got to know that integer stuff. Let's see what's next. Doink. Okay, now we have some parentheses, right? And this is where we need to make use of the distributive property. I'm just going to do the shortcut this time. So 5 times y and 5 times negative 3. That's going to give me 5y minus 15. We have to get rid of those parentheses first. Equals 1y plus 1. Look, now we have a situation like we've had in previous questions. We have a variable on both sides of the equal sign. Well, I don't like that, so I'm going to get rid of the smaller variable. In this case, that's 1y. I'm going to subtract off 1y there, and if I do it to that side of the equal sign, I have to do it to the other side of the equal sign. Let's see what's left. 5y minus 1y is 4y. Minus 15 equals 1y minus 1y goes away. And I'm left with a positive 1, I'll just call 1. Now we have a regular looking two-step equation. To solve it, add 15 to both sides. and you get 4y equals 16. That's a multiplication equation. To solve it, divide both sides by 4. And you get 1y, or y, equals 4. Look at that. Distributive property, right there. Like terms, right there. Two-step equation, right here. All this stuff you know, it's just putting it all together. This is why I love math, because you just put everything together. It's connecting the dots. Okay, check this one out now. 6 plus 4 times r minus 2 equals r plus 7. A few weeks back, you would have looked at this, you would have went, no way I'm doing this. Now you're looking at it, sure, no problem. So, let's make sure we deal with the parentheses first. So I'm going to still have 6 there, plus, but I've got to do my 4 times r and my 4 times negative 2. So that's 4r minus 8. And that equals r plus 7. Let's combine some like terms now. Positive 6, negative 8 gives me a negative 2. And I think I'm going to write this as 4r minus 2. Now that was a positive sign in front of the 4, right? But I don't need to have that there to know it's positive. With the negative 8, positive 6, I need to have that negative sign there. And that equals r plus 7. Okay, now we have a variable on both sides of the equal sign. I think I'll call that 1r. Normally I like to subtract off the smaller one so I don't have a variable on both sides of the equal sign. So I'm going to go minus 1r on that side of the equal sign and minus 1r there. And I'm left with 3r minus 2 equals 7. Now I have my two-step equation. Plus 2 to both sides, 3r equals 9. Now, divide both sides by 3, r equals 3. Again, look at that. We're doing some really neat math, or you're going to be doing this soon, but it's just connecting everything. Very last question. Look at this one. Love it. It's got distributive property on both sides of the equal sign. So let's get rid of those parentheses first. So be really careful here. This is negative 3 times 1. This is negative 3 times negative 1b. Remember that negative sign makes everything in here the opposite. So this is going to be negative 3 plus 3b when we expand those parentheses. On the other side of the equal sign, 2b and 2 times negative 1. So that's going to be 2b minus 2. Now we have a variable, don't like that. Where's my undo? There we go. We have a variable right here on this side of the equal sign and a variable right here. We don't want it on both sides of the equal sign, so I'm going to subtract off the smaller one. Minus 2b minus 2b. And I'm left with negative 3 plus b equals negative 2. Now look at that. We just have a one-step equation now. To solve it, beside the b, we have a negative 3, so the opposite of that is plus 3. And do it the same thing to the other side, plus 3. And b equals 1. And look at this. If you we haven't done a lot of this yet, but if you do go and check, if I was to replace the b in this parentheses with 1, and the b in these parentheses with 1, you would get 1 minus 1 is 0, and negative 3 times 0 is 0. And on the other side, you would get 1 minus 1 is 0, and 2 times 0 is 0. So you would get both sides of the equal sign are equal to 0. That's how you know you're right. Whew. We have finished all our work with equations. I'm going to get you to practice some equations like this. Now, these kinds of equations we're doing, they're actually more like grade 9, 10-ish kind of equations, but I figured you guys had the knowledge, we may as well take it a step further. So you're going to practice some of these, and you're going to have a test on equations on later in the week. I'm not going to give you too many of this kind, because this isn't really a grade 8 kind. I'll probably give you more that look like, some of these basic distributive property ones, and, just a couple that look like this. But you have the knowledge to do it, so make sure you do that practice assignment. We'll correct it in a couple days, and then I'll give you a little test on equations. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.